Apologize or get out of my house. Those were the words my son shouted at me after his wife staged an entire scene of crying and humiliation in front of me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the Granny's Voice channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are watching from now and what time it is there. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's shout out goes to Edna Coyler from Oklahoma, USA. Thank you for being part of this great family. Now, let me tell you what happened that day. It all started at their house. I had arrived for a family dinner that Saturday evening. Natasha was there sitting on her outrageously expensive sofa in her designer dress and that fake smile she always gives me when Daniel is looking. A smile that vanishes the instant he turns his head. Dinner was awkward as always. Natasha talked non-stop about her wealthy friends, her trips, the latest piece of jewelry Daniel had bought her, a diamond necklace that cost $8,000. She said it 3 times during dinner. $8,000. As if she needed me to know exactly how much it was worth. As if she needed to rub it in my face that she has the money and the power in that relationship. I tried to eat in silence. I nodded when necessary. I smiled when I was supposed to. I did everything possible to avoid conflict, but with Natasha, it's never enough. She always finds a way to make me the problem. Gloria, you passed the salt without me asking for it. Her voice came out sharp, offended, as if I had committed an unforgivable crime. I had seen her reaching for the salt shaker and simply slid it closer to her, a normal gesture, a common courtesy anyone would do at a table. But for Natasha, it was the perfect excuse. Sorry, I was just trying to help, I said calmly. With that infinite patience I've developed over these 3 years of enduring her contempt, but she was already starting her performance. It's just that you always do that. You always intervene. You always butt in. I can't even have a peaceful dinner without you hovering over me, controlling me. Her voice rose, her eyes filled with fake tears. Tears that sprang up in a second, as if she had them saved up, waiting for the perfect moment to use them. Daniel put his silverware down on his plate. The sound of metal on porcelain echoed in the silence. I saw him turn to me with an expression I had never seen before, pure hardness, as if I were a stranger who had just insulted his wife in his own home. Natasha, honey, what happened? His voice was soft when he spoke to her. Protective, full of concern, the same tone he used with me when he was a boy and someone bothered him at school. But now that tone was for her, and for me there was only contempt. Your mother constantly disrespects me. I can't take it anymore, Daniel. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when she always makes me feel like I'm not good enough for you. Natasha brought her napkin to her eyes. She sobbed. She trembled. An award-winning performance. And my son was buying every bit of it. I was paralyzed in my chair, fork still in hand, watching the scene like I was in a horror movie where I was the main character. I wanted to speak. I wanted to defend myself. But the words got stuck in my throat because I knew nothing I said would matter. Daniel had already chosen his side. Mom, you need to leave. Daniel's voice was dry, sharp, as if he were firing an employee who had made a serious mistake. I don't want you here tonight. I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I took my purse from the chair. My hands moved on their own, as if my body knew it had to get out of there before something worse happened. Daniel, I was just trying to help. I didn't mean to upset Natasha. My voice came out broken, small, as if I had shrunk into something insignificant, something that no longer deserved to be in that house full of luxury and appearances. But he was already comforting his wife, holding her, whispering things in her ear as she continued to cry against his chest. He didn't even look at me as I walked to the door. He didn't even lift his head to see his mother leave. Heartbroken, I reached the front door. I opened it. The cold night air hit my face. But before I could take a step outside, I heard his voice behind me. Firm, final, like a sentence with no appeal. Mom, this can't go on. Natasha is right. You're always interfering. You always make her feel uncomfortable. I need you to come next Saturday and apologize to her in front of all our guests. We're having a dinner party and you are going to apologize properly. Either that or don't bother coming back. I turned to look at him. There was my son. The boy I raised alone after his father abandoned us. The boy I fed with what little I had. The boy I dressed in second-hand clothes so he could go to a good school. The boy I worked double shifts for years. That boy was now a man who looked at me as if I were a problem he needed to solve. Apologize or get out of my house. Those words fell on me like stones. Heavy, cold, unmovable. Natasha appeared behind him. She wasn't crying anymore. She had a small smile on her lips, almost imperceptible. But I saw it. That smile of victory, that smile that said she had won, that she had put me in my place, that she had turned me into what she always wanted me to be. Nothing. I nodded. Not in submission. Not because I accepted their version of events. I nodded because in that moment, I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. If they wanted me to apologize in front of their guests, I would. But not in the way they expected. Not with my head bowed and the trembling voice of a mother desperate to win back her son's love. No, I was going to go to that dinner. I was going to stand up in front of all their rich friends with their plastic faces, and I was going to say something none of them expected to hear. Something that would destroy the entire perfect facade Natasha and Daniel had built. Something that would make them regret ever treating me this way. All right, Daniel. I'll be there on Saturday. I'll apologize to Natasha. I promise. My voice came out calm. Too calm. So calm that I saw a flicker of doubt in my son's eyes. But it was too late. I had already accepted. He had already sealed his own fate. I left that house with my back straight, without looking back, without crying, because the tears would come later in the loneliness of my apartment, in the darkness of my room. But not there, not in front of them. I wouldn't give them that pleasure. I walked down the empty street to the bus stop. The cold wind cut my face, but I barely felt it. My mind was already working. Remembering, connecting the dots, gathering pieces of a puzzle I had been ignoring for far too long because I knew things. Things Natasha thought no one else knew. Things I had seen, heard, kept silent about. The bus arrived. I sat in the back. I watched out the window as the city blurred past. The lights, the buildings, the people walking with their normal lives. And there I was, 67 years old, feeling like everything I had worked for was collapsing, but also feeling something new, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Determination. Because that Saturday wasn't going to be the day Gloria Santos knelt before a manipulative woman and her son, who was blinded by money. That Saturday was going to be the day the truth came out. The day everyone would see who Natasha Whitmore really was. The day my son would discover that the price of humiliating your mother is higher than he ever imagined. I got to my apartment. I closed the door. I stood in the darkness of the entryway. And for the first time in 3 years, I smiled. A small, bitter smile, but a real one. Because now I had a purpose. Now I had a plan. And nothing and no one was going to stop me. There was a time when Daniel and I were inseparable. A time when he would come to me to tell me everything, his joys, his fears, his dreams. A time when I was his favorite person in the whole world. I remember the day he was born, March 29th. It was raining so hard the streets looked like rivers. I was alone at the hospital. His father had left us 2 months earlier when he found out a baby was coming. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, that he had other plans, that I would understand someday. I never understood, but I didn't need him either because when they placed Daniel in my arms and I saw him open those dark eyes, I knew he was all I would ever need in this life. The first few years were hard. I worked in a laundromat during the day and cleaned offices at night. I slept 4 hours, sometimes less. But every time I came home and saw my son smiling at me from his crib, all the exhaustion disappeared. All the pain was worth it because I was building something. I was giving my son a chance at a better life than mine. Daniel was a brilliant child. He learned to read before the other kids in his class. He always brought home good grades. The teachers told me he was special, that he had a promising future, and I believed it. I worked more hours. I saved every penny, all so he could go to a good college someday. When he was 8, Daniel won a math contest at his school. I remember him running home with the certificate in his hands. Mom, I won. Look what I won." His eyes were shining with excitement, with pride. I hugged him so tight that he laughed and told me I was squishing him, but I couldn't let go. I couldn't stop thinking that all the sacrifice was paying off. That night, we had his favorite meal. Spaghetti with tomato sauce. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but for us it was a feast. We ate sitting on the living room floor because we didn't have a table yet. We laughed. We talked about his dreams. He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to build huge bridges that connected cities. He wanted to do important things. And I told him he would, that I would do everything possible to make sure he did. And I did. I worked until my body begged for rest. And even then, I kept going. Every extra dollar went into a savings account for his education. Every weekend I could pick up an extra shift, I took it. It didn't matter how tired I was. It didn't matter how much my back ached or how much my hands burned from all the washing and cleaning. Daniel was my purpose, my reason to keep going. When he reached his teenage years, our bond grew even stronger. He told me about the girls he liked, about problems with his friends, about his insecurities. I was his confidant, his advisor, his safe harbor. Every night before bed, he would come into my room and we would talk for hours about everything, about nothing, just enjoying each other's company. "Mom, you're the strongest person I know," he told me one night when he was 15. He had just found out that one of his classmates had both parents and lived in a big house with a yard. I think he felt bad about our situation, about our small apartment, about the clothes I wore, which were already years old. But I took his hand and told him we didn't need more, that the two of us were enough, that love isn't measured in square feet or new clothes. And he believed me for many years. He believed me. We were a team, Gloria and Daniel against the world. That's what we called ourselves. That's how we felt. Invincible, united, unbreakable. He managed to get into college on a scholarship. I cried with happiness the day the acceptance letter came. I cried so much that Daniel had to hug me and tell me it was okay, that we had done it, that his life was going to change. And it did. He studied civil engineering just like he always dreamed. He graduated with honors. He got a job at a major firm. He earned good money. Very good money. More money than we had ever seen in our entire lives. The first thing he did when he got his first paycheck was take me to a fancy restaurant. "Mom, this is for everything you did for me." He ordered wine. He ordered an appetizer. He ordered dessert. He spent almost $200 that night. I felt uncomfortable with so much luxury. But he was so happy, so proud to be able to treat me, so grateful. He took my hand across the table and told me he would never forget everything I had sacrificed for him. I'll never forget those words because they were the last truly honest words he ever said to me. The last words before everything changed, before she appeared. During the first few years of his career, Daniel came to visit me every week. Sundays were ours. We ate together. We watched movies. We talked about his work, his projects, his future plans. He bought me a new refrigerator when the old one broke. He helped me pay the rent when I had a tough month. He was attentive, affectionate, present. "Mom, when I have my own house, you're going to live with me." He promised me more than once. "You'll never have to worry about anything ever again. I'm going to take care of you like you took care of me." And I believed him. Of course, I believed him. He was my son, my boy, the man I had trusted my entire life. But then she arrived, Natasha Whitmore. He met her at a business conference, a woman from a wealthy family with contacts, with influence, with all the money we never had. Daniel introduced me to her 3 months after they started dating. He brought her to my apartment one Saturday afternoon. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special." His voice sounded excited, nervous, like when he was a kid and had something important to show me. I opened the door and there she was, Natasha, with her brand name clothes, her expensive shoes, her perfume that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked at me with a polite smile, but her eyes sized me up in a second. They measured me, they judged me, and they found me lacking. "A pleasure, Gloria." She didn't say Mrs. Santos. She just used my first name as if we were friends the same age. As if she had the right to be so informal from the first moment. She walked into my apartment and looked around with that expression I now know so well. That expression that says everything without saying a word. That expression that screams how small, how old, how poor. I made coffee. I served cookies I had bought especially for the visit. I tried to make conversation, but Natasha answered in monosyllables, with forced smiles, with glances at her watch, as if being in my home was a torture she had to endure just because Daniel had asked her to. And Daniel didn't notice or didn't want to notice. He was so fascinated by her, so enchanted. He looked at her as if she were the most wonderful thing he had ever seen. And maybe to him she was because Natasha represented everything he never had. The money, the status, the entry into a world he had once only watched from the outside. After that visit, everything changed. Slowly at first. So slowly I almost didn't notice. Daniel started cancelling our Sundays. I have dinner with Natasha's parents. I have a work event. I have to go with Natasha to some function. There was always a reason. There was always something more important than spending time with me. The calls became less frequent. The visits more spaced out. And when he did come, he wasn't the same. He talked differently. He dressed differently. Even the way he looked at me had changed. As if he were suddenly ashamed of where he came from. As if I were an uncomfortable reminder of a life he wanted to forget. But I kept waiting. I kept believing it was just a phase. That when the novelty of the relationship wore off, my son would come back. That he would remember who was there when he had nothing. That he would remember who sacrificed everything so he could get where he was. How wrong I was. Natasha entered my son's life like a quiet storm. At first, everything seemed normal, even nice. Daniel was in love, and I wanted to see him happy. That's what a mother does. You put your son's happiness above your own doubts, above that inner voice telling you something isn't right. The first few months after meeting her were confusing. Daniel still visited, but it wasn't the same. He'd arrive in a hurry. He'd leave early. He always had his phone in his hand, always waiting for a text from her. And when that text arrived, his face would light up in a way that hurt me because that light wasn't for me anymore. It wasn't because he was with me. It was for her. One Sunday, he arrived with news. Mom, Natasha and I are getting married. He said it with a huge smile, with that childlike excitement he always had when something good happened to him. I should have jumped for joy. I should have hugged him. I should have told him I was happy for him. But something in my chest tightened. Something told me this wasn't going to end well. Still, I smiled. Still, I hugged him. Still, I said all the words a son expects to hear from his mother at a moment like that. Because that's what we mothers do. We swallow our fears. We hide our doubts and we offer support even if inside we're dying of worry. The wedding was elegant. Too elegant. They got married in a ballroom that cost over $30,000 just for one night. There were flowers everywhere, imported roses, orchids, arrangements so large they looked like sculptures. The food was from a renowned chef. The cake had 5 tiers. Everything was perfect. Everything was excessive. Everything was from Natasha's world. I felt out of place from the moment I walked in. My dress was simple, pretty, but simple. I had bought it at a discount store because I couldn't spend $500 on a dress like the other guests. I did my own hair. My shoes were already 2 years old. And as I walked among all those elegant people, I felt every stare, every silent judgment, every thought that said she doesn't belong here. Natasha's family greeted me with cold courtesy. Her mother shook my hand as if she were touching something dirty. Her father didn't even look me in the eye. Her siblings ignored me after the obligatory hello. I was the mother of the groom, but to them, I was invisible. Worse than invisible. I was an uncomfortable reminder that Daniel came from nothing, that he hadn't always had money or an important last name. During the ceremony, I sat in the front row alone because I had no one else. My family is small. My friends couldn't afford to come to a wedding like that. So, there I was, watching my son marry a woman I barely knew, watching him look at her as if she were his entire universe, and feeling like I was becoming nothing. At the reception, they sat me at a table in the back, far from the head table where the bride and groom were, far from Natasha's family who occupied the best tables. I shared a table with people who also didn't know anyone, distant cousins of someone, friends of friends, all just as lost as I was in that sea of luxury and appearances. Daniel came to greet me during the dancing. "Mom, you look beautiful." He lied. I knew it wasn't true. But I appreciated the lie because at least it meant he still cared about my feelings. We danced one song. He led me to the floor and I tried not to cry. I tried not to think that this was the beginning of the end. That after today, my son wouldn't be just mine anymore. He wouldn't need me like he used to. "Thank you for everything, Mom. For giving me the life you gave me, for preparing me for this moment." He whispered in my ear as we danced. And I nodded because I couldn't speak. Because if I opened my mouth, I would sob. I would beg him not to forget me, not to let her change him, to remember where he came from. But I said nothing. I just danced with my son. I just enjoyed those 3 minutes that would probably be the last time he saw me as someone important in his life. After the wedding, everything accelerated. Daniel and Natasha moved into a house that she bought, a huge house in an upscale suburban neighborhood where every property was worth over $500,000. I went to visit them a week after they got back from their honeymoon. I brought a gift, a simple but nice set of dishes. It was what I could afford, what my budget allowed. Natasha opened the gift in front of me. She looked at the plates, turned them over to see the brand, and then she smiled. That smile. I was starting to know. That smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "How lovely, Gloria. Thank you. Although we already have a dinner service, but we can use this for when we eat something informal. Something simple." She left the box on the table as if it were trash to be thrown out later. Daniel said nothing. He didn't defend my gift. He didn't tell his wife to be kinder. He just looked away, uncomfortable, ashamed. And I understood in that moment that I couldn't count on him anymore, that she already had more power over him than I did. The following months were a process of slow disappearance. Every time I called, Daniel was busy. Every time I suggested visiting, there was a commitment, a dinner, a trip, a meeting, always something that was more important than seeing his mother. And when they finally did invite me, Natasha was there controlling the conversation. Interrupting when I spoke, correcting things I said. "Daniel, your mom said you put the tomato in first, but really it goes in last." Small corrections, small humiliations designed to make me feel stupid, to make me feel like I knew nothing, that she knew more, that she was better. And the worst part is that Daniel let it happen. He would laugh. He would nod. He would agree with her. His mother who raised him. His mother who sacrificed everything for him. His mother who worked until she broke so he could get an education. That mother was now less important than his rich wife's opinion. One day I visited without calling first. It was a mistake. I knew it the moment Natasha opened the door and I saw her face. Pure annoyance. Disgust almost. "Gloria, we weren't expecting you." She didn't say come in. She didn't say what a surprise. She just left me standing there at the door as if I were a persistent salesperson who had knocked at a bad time. I just wanted to see Daniel. I haven't seen him in 3 weeks. My voice came out small, pleading. I hated how I sounded. I hated that I had become someone who had to beg to see her own son. He's working. He has an important meeting on a video call. He can't be interrupted. Natasha was already closing the door. I put my foot out to stop it. A desperate gesture, a pathetic gesture. But I needed to see my son. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to feel that I still mattered to someone. "Just a moment, please," I said, almost begging. And she sighed. That long sigh that says you're such a nuisance. That sigh that makes you feel like you're a burden, a problem, something to be tolerated. "Wait here." She didn't let me in. She made me stay on the porch as if I were a stranger. As if after carrying Daniel in my womb for 9 months, after raising him alone for 25 years, I didn't have the right to enter his house. I waited for 15 minutes. Standing there feeling the neighbors pass by and look at me. An old woman standing on a fancy porch as if she were begging. That's what I must have looked like. That's what they made me feel like. Finally, Daniel came out. He had his phone in his hand. His face was tense. "Mom, you can't just show up like this without calling. I'm working." He didn't even hug me. He didn't even smile. He just scolded me as if I were a child who had done something wrong. "I just wanted to see you, honey. We haven't talked in so long." I tried to touch his arm, but he moved away. A small movement, almost imperceptible, but I felt it like a slap. "I'll call you later, Mom. I can't talk right now." And he closed the door without a kiss, without a hug, without anything. He just closed the door and left me there standing, feeling like I had just lost my son forever. I walked to the bus stop with tears in my eyes. I cried the whole way home. I cried on the bus full of people pretending not to see me. I cried in my empty apartment. I cried until I had no tears left. And then I realized something. Natasha hadn't just married my son. She had conquered him. She had changed him. She had turned him into someone I no longer recognized. Someone capable of closing the door in his own mother's face. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Worse even than when Daniel's father abandoned us. Worse than the nights working without sleep. Worse than the years of poverty and sacrifice. Because this time the pain was coming from my own son. And that pain has no equal. I tried to talk to him. I tried to make him see what was happening. I would call and he was always in a hurry. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Mom, I'm heading out to dinner. Mom, Natasha is waiting for me." Always an excuse. Always something more important than listening to his mother. One afternoon, I finally got him to come to my apartment. I told him I needed to talk to him about something important. He came, but he had that annoyed look on his face. That expression that says, "I have better things to do. But I came because it's my obligation." He sat on the edge of the sofa. He didn't even take off his jacket, ready to leave at any moment. "Daniel, I feel like I'm losing you." I was direct. No beating around the bush because I didn't have time to be careful anymore. "I barely see you. We barely talk. And when we are together, I feel like you're not really with me. That your head is somewhere else with her." His face changed. It became hard, defensive. "Mom, don't start. Natasha has nothing to do with this." His voice was irritated, as if I had said something offensive. As if mentioning his wife were a crime. "I didn't say she's to blame. I'm just saying that since you got married, everything changed. You changed." I tried to stay calm. I tried not to sound accusatory, but it was hard because every word I said was true and he knew it. "I grew up, Mom. That's what happens. People grow up. People change. I can't keep being your little boy my whole life. I have a wife now. I have responsibilities. I have a life." His words were like blows. Each one designed to hurt me, to make me feel like I was the problem, that I was the one who didn't understand. "I'm not asking you to be my little boy. I'm just asking you to include me in your life, to not treat me like I'm a stranger, like I'm not the person who gave everything for you." My voice broke. I hated showing him weakness, but I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. "You're so dramatic, always exaggerating everything. Natasha is right. You're too intense, too demanding." He stood up. He was already leaving. He had already decided this conversation was over. And I couldn't do anything to stop him. "Natasha said that about me." It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. A confirmation that she spoke ill of me. That she was filling him with poison against his own mother and he was letting her. Worse, he believed her. Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at me with those eyes. I no longer recognized those eyes where there once was love and now there was only discomfort, annoyance. "I need to go, Mom. Natasha is waiting for me to go to dinner with her parents." And he left, leaving me there with a broken heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. After that conversation, I stopped insisting. I stopped calling him so much. I stopped suggesting plans because every rejection hurt more than the last. Every excuse was like a door slamming shut. And I was tired of banging my head against closed doors. But the silence was worse. Not hearing from him, not hearing his voice. Watching weeks go by without a call, without a text, without anything. It was like watching him die slowly, like losing him bit by bit, and not being able to do anything to stop it. One night, I dared to send him a text. Simple, direct. Daniel, I miss you. Can we see each other? I sent it and stared at the phone, waiting for his reply. An hour passed, 2 hours, 3 hours, nothing. He left me on read. He didn't reply. My own son ignored me as if I didn't exist. 2 days later, he finally responded. Sorry, Mom. I've been busy. Maybe we can get together next month. Next month. As if I were a dentist appointment that could be rescheduled. As if seeing me were an annoying obligation that had to be fulfilled eventually, but with no hurry. I tried to fill my time with other things. I started going to church more often. I made friends with Eleanor, a woman my age who was also alone. She understood. She also had children who had drifted away, who visited her once a year if she was lucky. We would meet for coffee, talk about our lives, our sorrows. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless, but nothing filled the void Daniel had left. Nothing healed the pain of knowing that the son I gave everything for now treated me like I was an obstacle in his perfect life. The months passed and the visits became even rarer. When they finally invited me to their house, everything was awkward. Natasha treated me with that fake kindness that is worse than direct mistreatment. She'd offer me coffee in expensive cups. She'd ask how I was in a sweet voice, but with empty eyes. And I played the game. I smiled. I said everything was fine. I pretended not to notice her digs, her poisoned comments disguised as concern. Gloria, you look tired. Are you sleeping well? You should take better care of yourself at your age, she'd say while pouring me tea in fine china. As if she cared. As if she were really worried about my well-being. But I saw the truth in her eyes. She just wanted me to look bad, to feel bad, to know that I didn't belong in her world. And Daniel sat right there, silent, letting it happen. Sometimes he even agreed when she said something particularly hurtful, like when she mentioned I should update my wardrobe because the clothes I wore were so outdated. He laughed. My own son laughed at his mother's clothes. The same mother who wore old clothes for years so he could have a new uniform for school. Natasha started comparing us subtly at first. My mother traveled to Europe last month. It was wonderful. Have you traveled, Gloria? She knew perfectly well I had never left the country, that I barely had money to pay my rent. But she needed to rub it in. She needed me to know that she came from a better world, that her family was superior, that I was less. One day, I arrived at their house and found they had changed all the photographs. Before, there were some pictures of Daniel as a child, pictures I had given them, pictures of the two of us, of our life together. But now, there were only pictures of the two of them, of their wedding, of their trips, of their perfect life where I didn't exist. They had erased my history with my son. They had erased our past. As if those years had never existed. Where are the pictures that were here? I asked, trying to sound casual, trying not to show that I was dying inside. Oh, those. We put them in storage. Natasha redecorated. Everything is more modern now, more elegant. Daniel didn't even look at me when he said it. He was checking his phone as if this were an unimportant conversation. As if he hadn't just told me he had stored away all the proof that I was ever important in his life. Every visit was a new humiliation. Every encounter, a new way to make me feel small, insignificant, invisible. And the worst part is that Daniel didn't just allow it. He participated. He had become his wife's accomplice in the task of destroying his mother. The invitations became even more spaced out. And when they did come, they always came with conditions. Come for dinner, Mom, but not too late. We have plans after. Come on Sunday, but only for 2 hours because we're going out. Come, but don't bring food. Natasha already cooked. Come, but don't talk about certain topics. They make Natasha uncomfortable. Come, but basically, don't be you. Don't exist. Just show up and disappear without a trace. I tried to talk to Daniel one more time over the phone because he wouldn't even see me in person anymore. Daniel, I know Natasha doesn't want me around and I understand she's your wife and she's your priority now, but I am your mother. That doesn't change. That should never change. Mom, enough already. You're obsessed. Natasha has nothing against you. You're the one who's always looking for trouble. The one who's always making drama. His voice sounded tired, fed up, as if I were a capricious child who couldn't understand reason. As if this were all a product of my imagination, of my need to create conflict where there was none. I'm not looking for trouble. I just want you to treat me like your mother, to include me in your life, to not make me feel like I'm a nuisance. The tears started to fall. My voice trembled. I didn't care about sounding desperate anymore. I was desperate. I can't keep having this conversation. It's always the same with you. Always the victim, always suffering. You need to grow up, Mom. You need to understand that you're not the center of my world anymore. And he hung up. My son hung up the phone on me while I was crying, while I was begging him for a little love, for a little consideration. I sat there in my living room with the phone in my hand, feeling like I had just lost the final battle, that there was nothing more to be done, that my son was gone, that the boy I raised with so much love had become a stranger, someone capable of hurting me without remorse, without guilt, without anything. The truth came to me in the most unexpected way. A Tuesday afternoon, I had gone to the bank to deposit my social security check when I saw Natasha coming out of a fancy downtown coffee shop. She wasn't alone. She was with a man, young, well-dressed, and the way they were talking wasn't the way you talk to a friend. It was intimate, complicit, suspicious. I hid behind a lamppost. I didn't want her to see me. I didn't want to have to greet her and pretend everything was fine. But I couldn't stop watching either. There was something about that scene that unsettled me. Something that told me I needed to pay attention. The man handed her a folder. Natasha opened it. She reviewed some papers. She nodded. And then she took an envelope from her purse and gave it to him. It was fast, discreet. But I saw it. I saw the exchange. I saw how she looked around before doing it, as if she didn't want anyone to see her. And then I knew something was wrong. That whatever was happening there wasn't legal, or at least it wasn't honest. I stood there for several minutes after they both left, trying to process what I had seen, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe he was a lawyer. Maybe they were work papers. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there because I was already biased against her. But something deep inside told me no, that this was important, that I had to investigate, that I had finally found a clue to who Natasha Whitmore really was. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept turning over what I had seen. The envelope, the folder, the nervous way Natasha looked around. And then I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. I was going to find out what she was hiding. I was going to find the truth, even if it hurt me, even if it destroyed what little was left of my relationship with Daniel. I called Eleanor the next day. Eleanor, I need your help. I told her what I had seen. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed. Gloria, be careful. Getting involved in this could be dangerous. But I had already decided. There was no turning back. Eleanor had a nephew who worked as a private investigator. Nothing big, small cases, infidelities, minor fraud, but he knew how to get information, how to follow leads, how to find what others wanted to hide. I asked Eleanor to put me in touch with him. James Mitchell, that was his name. A man in his 40s. Serious, professional. We met at a coffee shop far from Daniel's neighborhood. I didn't want to risk anyone seeing us. I told him everything about the man, the folder, the envelope, and I also told him about how Natasha had entered my son's life, how she had pushed me away, how everything had changed since she appeared. Mrs. Santos, I understand your situation, but I need you to understand that this could take time and it could cost money. Investigating isn't cheap. James was honest from the start. He told me he would need at least $1,000 to start, to follow her, to check public records, to see if there was anything shady in her past. $1,000 was almost everything I had saved. It was my emergency fund, The money I kept in case I got sick, in case I had to move, in case something serious happened. But in that moment, I knew there was nothing more serious than losing my son without a fight. That if I didn't do this, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I gave him the money, all of it, and James began his work. He told me he would call me in 2 weeks, that I shouldn't try to contact Natasha or Daniel in the meantime, that I should act normal, that I shouldn't raise any suspicions. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. Every day I woke up wondering if I had done the right thing. If this wouldn't just make me the villain of the story, the meddling mother-in-law who couldn't let her son live his life. But then I would remember Daniel's face, how he had changed, how he treated me. And I knew that some outside force was influencing him, that my son hadn't become like this on his own, that someone was behind it, and that someone was Natasha. James's call came on a Thursday afternoon. "Mrs. Santos, we need to talk. I found something." His voice sounded serious, worried even. We arranged to meet that same night at the same coffee shop. When I arrived, James was already there. He had a folder on the table, thicker than I expected. It looked full of papers, documents, proof. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. "Mrs. Santos, what I found is serious. Very serious," he began without wasting time. "Natasha Whitmore has been manipulating your son from the beginning. And not just emotionally, financially, too." He opened the folder and started showing me documents, contracts, bank statements, printed conversations. Natasha convinced Daniel to put all his savings into investments she supposedly managed. She promised to double his money in a year. He trusted her. He gave her everything. Over $120,000 he had saved from years of work. James pointed to the papers as he spoke. The numbers, the accounts. All right there. Black and white. "And what happened to that money?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. I already knew nothing good could come of this. "It disappeared. Or rather she moved it to accounts in her name to real investments, but ones where she is the sole beneficiary. Daniel put up the money, but she is the only owner. If they get divorced tomorrow, he doesn't see a cent of it back." James turned to another document. This is the contract he signed. It's written in a way that makes it look like they're partners. But if you read the fine print, everything is in her name. I felt the floor move beneath me. My son had been scammed. By the woman who claimed to love him, by the woman he married. And worse, he had no idea. He trusted her blindly. He had given her everything, and she had taken it without remorse. "There's more," James continued. "I found texts between Natasha and her mother from before the wedding, talking about how Daniel was the perfect candidate. Young, good salary, no family to interfere much. Those were her words. No family to interfere. And then there are more recent messages where she talks about you, Mrs. Santos." "What do they say?" My voice came out as a whisper. I was trembling. My whole body was trembling. James showed me the screenshots. WhatsApp conversations between Natasha and her mother, between Natasha and her friends, all talking about me, about the old lady, about the mother-in-law who doesn't know her place, about how she needed to get Daniel away from me because I was an obstacle to her plans. I've almost got him where I want him. I just need him to finish cutting ties with the mother. He's too dependent on her. But I'm working on it. Little by little, I'm convincing him she's toxic, that she manipulates him, that he needs to get away to be happy. That message was from 6 months ago. 6 months in which Natasha had systematically poisoned my son against me. Another message read, "The old lady showed up today without calling." I had to make up that Daniel was busy. She can't keep just appearing like that. I need him to set clearer boundaries. Maybe if I stage a situation where she looks bad in front of everyone, he'll finally understand he has to choose. Either her or me. And obviously, he'll choose me. Tears streamed down my face unchecked. I read message after message, seeing how this woman had planned every step, every humiliation, every moment of pain. It had all been calculated. It had all been part of a plan to destroy my relationship with my son and take his money. I also found this. James pulled out more papers. Natasha has debts. A lot of debts. Her family isn't as rich as they seem. Her father has been bankrupt for 3 years. He lost his business. The house they live in is mortgaged to the hilt. All the money they have is borrowed. It's all appearances. Pure smoke. And Natasha needed to marry someone who could maintain that lifestyle, someone who had money or who could get it. And she found Daniel. He showed me bank statements from the Whitmore family, debts to banks, to lenders, to credit card companies, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all the while they kept up appearances, kept living in their big house, kept buying expensive clothes, kept traveling, all with money they didn't have, all with loans they couldn't pay. And now Natasha was doing the same with my son's money, spending it, investing it in her name, making sure that when everything collapsed, she would be protected, and Daniel would be left with nothing. Does Daniel know any of this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. James shook his head. He has no idea. She shows him fake account statements, tells him the investments are doing well, that they're making money. But the truth is, every month she takes money out of those accounts to pay her family's debts, to maintain the illusion of wealth. And Daniel works harder and harder thinking he's building a future, not knowing that future is being stolen every single day. I closed my eyes. I tried to breathe. I tried to process everything I had just discovered. My son was being manipulated, scammed, deliberately alienated from me, and all for money. For damn money and appearances. What do I do with this, James? How do I tell my son that the woman he loves is a liar? How do I show him this without him thinking I'm making it up because I don't like his wife? That's the problem, Mrs. Santos. Natasha has done a perfect job. She has planted in Daniel's mind that you are the problem, that you're controlling, jealous, manipulative. So, if you show up with this proof, there's a good chance he won't believe you, that he'll think you paid to fabricate evidence, that you're so desperate to separate them, that you're capable of lying. I spent days staring at those documents. I read them over and over as if they might change. As if I'd discover it was all a mistake, that James had been wrong, that Natasha wasn't really a manipulator who had planned everything from the beginning. But no, the papers kept saying the same thing. The truth remained the same, raw, painful, undeniable. I put everything in a shoe box at the back of my closet. I couldn't leave them out. Every time I saw them, my stomach hurt. It made me want to call Daniel and scream the truth at him, to go to his house and shove the documents in his face, to force him to see what I saw. But I knew I couldn't do it that way. Natasha had done her work too well. She had turned me into the enemy, the toxic mother who couldn't be trusted. Eleanor came to visit me often during those days. She brought me food because I had no desire to cook. She sat with me in silence when I didn't want to talk. And when I finally did speak, she just listened. She didn't judge. She didn't tell me what to do. She was just there. And that was more than my own son was doing for me. You have to be smart, Gloria. You have to think carefully about how to use this because you're only going to get one chance. If you do it wrong, Daniel will never believe you, and you'll lose him for good. Eleanor's words echoed in my head all the time. She was right. I couldn't mess this up. I couldn't let my emotions control me. I had to be cold, calculating. Like Natasha. I started to watch, to pay attention to every detail. Every time Daniel mentioned something about his life, I wrote it down. Dates, names, places, financial decisions Natasha had suggested, trips they had taken, big purchases, everything. I was building a map, a timeline that showed the pattern, the systematic way Natasha had taken control. I also started saving every text Daniel sent me. Every conversation where he repeated things that Natasha had clearly told him. Mom, you need to understand you can't just come over whenever you want. Mom, she feels uncomfortable when you criticize her decisions. Mom, you have to respect that I have my own family now. Words that didn't sound like my son. Words that had Natasha's venom hidden behind them. James called me 2 weeks later. I have more information. Natasha is planning something. We arranged to meet again. This time in a park, more discreet. Less chance of anyone seeing us together. Natasha is going to ask Daniel to buy a new house. Bigger, more expensive. She already found one. It's worth $800,000. She's going to tell him it's an investment. That the value will go up. That it's the perfect time. James showed me an email she had sent to a real estate agent dated 2 days prior. My husband has good credit and excellent income. We are ready to make an offer. Daniel doesn't have $800,000. He barely had enough to buy the one they live in now, I said, confused, not understanding how Natasha planned to do this. I know. But she's going to convince him to take out a massive loan to use all the credit he has. And when they get that house, she's going to have it put in both their names, but with a special clause. If they divorce, the house goes to her because she's going to argue that her family put down the down payment, which is a lie. But she'll forge documents to prove it. James knew things that scared me. Things that made me wonder just how deep Natasha's plan went. That's fraud. That's illegal. My voice trembled. Not with fear, with rage, with helplessness. Watching this woman destroy my son, and I couldn't do anything to stop her. It is. But it's very hard to prove if Daniel signs voluntarily. If he agrees to everything without reading, without questioning, which is exactly what Natasha has been training him to do for 3 years. Trust her blindly. Don't doubt. Don't ask for second opinions. Just sign where she tells him. James put the papers away. Mrs. Santos, if you're going to do something, it has to be soon before he signs for that house, because if he does, he will be financially tied to Natasha for decades, and getting out of that will be almost impossible. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed with the box of documents in my lap, thinking, planning, trying to find the perfect way to reveal the truth. It had to be in public. It had to be in front of witnesses. It had to be at a moment when Natasha couldn't escape, where she couldn't twist the story, where she couldn't play the victim. And then I remembered the dinner party, the one where I was supposed to apologize, where Daniel had invited his rich friends, Natasha's associates, the people who mattered in their new world of appearances. That was my chance. That was the perfect moment. I called James. I need you to come to that dinner. I need you to be a witness. And I need you to bring everything, every document, every piece of proof, every text, everything. I explained my plan. He listened in silence. When I finished, there was a long pause. Mrs. Santos, this is going to be brutal. It's going to destroy Natasha, but it's also going to destroy the image Daniel has of his life, of his marriage, of everything. Are you sure you want to do this? His voice sounded worried, as if he were warning me of the consequences, as if there were no going back after this. I'm sure. My son deserves to know the truth. He deserves to know that the woman he married is using him, is stealing from him, and is deliberately pushing his mother away. If after knowing all this he still decides to stay with her, at least it will be his decision, an informed decision, not one based on lies. My voice came out firm, firmer than I had felt in months. All right, I'll be there. James agreed. And then I knew there was no turning back. That at that dinner everything was going to change for better or for worse. But it was going to change, and I was going to be the one to start it. I spent the days leading up to the dinner preparing, rehearsing in my head what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. I had to be perfect. I had to be clear, direct, with no emotions to betray me, no tears to make me look weak, no rage to make me look like the bitter mother-in-law, just facts, just truth, just justice. I tried on 3 different dresses. I wanted to look dignified, respectable. I didn't want anyone to be able to say I was the poor mother envious of her son's life. I chose a grey dress. Simple but elegant. I fixed my hair. I put on a little makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. A woman who was no longer going to beg. A woman who was no longer going to humiliate herself. A woman who was going to fight. Eleanor came to see me the night before the dinner. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm ready. For the first time in a long time, I'm ready." She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Be careful, Gloria. Whatever happens tomorrow, be careful and don't have any regrets. Whatever you do, don't regret it." "I'm not going to regret it. I've spent too much time regretting not acting sooner." regretting letting Natasha do whatever she wanted, regretting accepting the crumbs of attention Daniel gave me. Not anymore. Tomorrow it all ends. Either I get my son back or I lose him for good. But at least I'm going down fighting. Daniel's call came on Wednesday morning. Mom, Natasha, and I are having a dinner party on Saturday. We want you to come. His voice sounded strangely formal, like he was reading a script, like someone had told him exactly what to say. Of course, honey. What time do you want me to be there? I kept my voice calm. Sweet, the voice of the obedient mother they expected. The mother who was coming to apologize, the mother who had finally learned her place. At 8. And Mom, I need you to know there will be guests, our friends, important people. Natasha wants everything to be perfect. He paused, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to protest, to say I didn't want to apologize in front of strangers, but I said nothing. I just waited for him to continue. And we need you to apologize to Natasha in front of everyone, for how you've treated her, for making her feel uncomfortable, for not respecting our space. She deserves that apology, Mom. And I deserve it, too. There it was. The confirmation, the exact plan. Humiliate me in front of his social circle. Put me in my place. Show who held the power in that family. All right, Daniel. I'll be there and I will talk to Natasha in front of everyone. I promise. I wasn't lying. I was going to talk to Natasha in front of everyone. It just wasn't going to be the conversation they expected. It wasn't going to be the humiliating apology they had planned. It was going to be something completely different. Thanks, Mom. I know this is hard for you, but it's necessary. We need to move forward as a family, and that can only happen if you accept your mistake. His voice sounded relieved, satisfied. He thought he had won, that he had finally broken me, that I had accepted my defeat. He hung up and I stared at the phone, feeling that strange mix of sadness and determination. Sadness because my son truly believed I was the problem. Determination because in 3 days, I was going to show him who the problem had been all along. I called James immediately. It's Saturday at 8. I need you to arrive at 8:30 when everyone is already there, when they can't cancel or escape. I gave him the address. I repeated the plan. He confirmed he would be there with everything, with every piece of proof, every document, every text. The next few days were strange. I was calm, too calm. Eleanor told me I seemed like a different person, that I had a piece about me that was scary. And she was right because I had already made the decision. I already knew what I was going to do. There were no more doubts. There was no more fear, just clarity, just purpose. Saturday arrived. I woke up early, even though the dinner was at night. I showered. I got ready calmly. I put on the grey dress. I did my makeup. I looked in the mirror. And for the first time in months, I recognized myself. I wasn't the broken woman I had been. I wasn't the pleading mother begging for attention. I was Gloria Santos. The woman who raised a son on her own. The woman who worked to exhaustion. The woman who deserved respect and who was about to demand it. I took a taxi to Daniel's house. I arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. I rang the doorbell. My heart was pounding, but my hands weren't shaking. I was ready. More ready than I had ever been for anything in my life. Natasha opened the door. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost $1,000. Sparkling jewelry, perfect makeup, fake smile. Gloria, so glad you could make it. Her voice dripped with poisonous sweetness. The sweetness she uses when there are witnesses. When she has to pretend to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I walked in. The house was full of people. Elegant couples, well-dressed, with wine glasses in their hands, chatting in small groups. The smell of expensive food filled the air. Everything was perfect. Everything was designed to impress, to show success, to scream. Look at everything we have. Daniel walked over. He gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Mom, thanks for coming. Come. I want to introduce you to some friends. He led me from group to group, introducing me as his mother, but without pride, without affection, just as a social obligation. This is my mom. This is Gloria. Empty words. Meaningless. Loveless. I smiled. I said, "Hello." I accepted the glasses of wine they offered me. Even though I don't drink, I just held them. Just played the part that was expected of me. The grateful mother. Happy to be included. The mother who was going to apologize. The mother who had finally learned. At 8:20, Natasha tapped her glass with a knife. The sound got everyone's attention. The conversation stopped. All faces turned to her. She smiled. That smile of triumph. That smile that said, "Now comes the good part. Now comes the public humiliation." Friends, thank you for being here tonight. Daniel and I wanted to share this special dinner with you. And we also wanted you to be witnesses to something important. She looked at me. Her eyes glittered with barely contained malice. Gloria, Daniel's mother, has something she wants to say to us. Something she needs to say in front of all of you. Everyone looked at me, expectant, curious, some with pity, others with discomfort. No one knew exactly what to expect, but everyone knew it was going to be awkward. I stood up. I set my glass on the table. I walked to the center of the living room, right in front of Natasha and Daniel. "You're right, Natasha. I do have something to say, and I need everyone to hear it." My voice came out clear, firm, unwavering. I looked at my son. I looked at the woman who had destroyed our relationship. And then I smiled. A small, calm smile. The smile of someone who knows they're holding all the winning cards. At that moment, the doorbell rang. James had arrived, exactly on time, just as we had planned. Natasha frowned. She wasn't expecting any more guests. Daniel, confused, went to open the door. When he saw James with his briefcase, his face showed surprise. "This is James Mitchell. He's with me. He's part of what I need to tell you," I said before Daniel could ask. James walked in. He nodded a short greeting. He stood beside me like an ally, like a witness, like living proof that what I was about to say wasn't a product of my imagination or my desperation. It was real. It was verifiable. It was undeniable. "Natasha, you asked me to apologize to you, to admit that I've been a bad mother-in-law, that I've interfered, that I've made you feel uncomfortable." I paused. I let the silence stretch. I let everyone pay attention. "And you're right. I should apologize, but not for what you think." Her face changed. The smile vanished. In her eyes, something new appeared. Worry, fear, maybe, as if she suddenly realized this was not going according to her plan, that I was not the submissive mother she expected, that something had changed. "I must apologize for taking so long to find out who you really are. For letting you manipulate my son for 3 years, for not acting sooner. But that ends today. Today, everyone is going to know the truth about you, Natasha Whitmore. About your family, about your intentions, about everything you've been hiding behind that fake smile and that borrowed luxury." The silence in the room was absolute. No one breathed. No one moved. Everyone stared. Daniel took a step toward me. "Mom, what are you doing?" His voice sounded alarmed, angry, but also confused, as if he didn't know whether to stop me or listen. "I'm saving my son. That's what I'm doing." I looked at James. He opened his briefcase. He took out the first folder, the first piece of proof, the first of many documents that were about to destroy the perfect world Natasha had built on lies. And we began. James placed the first folder on the dining room table. All the guests gathered around, curious, uncomfortable, unable to look away from what was about to be revealed. Natasha stood still, too still, like an animal that knows it's trapped, but is still looking for an escape. "Daniel, your wife convinced you 2 years ago to invest all your savings in a fund she supposedly managed. $120,000. Your money. The money you earned with your work." I began. My voice was steady. Every word measured. Every sentence a direct blow to the heart of the lie. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Daniel tried to interrupt. His face was a mask of confusion, annoyance, but also a flicker of fear, as if a part of him already knew he wasn't going to like what came next. "Let me finish. James, show them the documents." James opened the folder. He took out the contracts, the bank statements, the papers that showed every movement of that money. Here is the contract you signed, Daniel. It says that you and Natasha are partners, that you both own the investment. But if you read this clause right here in the fine print, you'll see that in the event of a marital dissolution, all assets go to her, only her. Daniel took the papers. His hands were shaking. He read. He reread. His face changed with every line. From confusion to disbelief, from disbelief to understanding, from understanding to horror. Natasha, is this true? Why is this clause here? His voice sounded broken, as if every word pained him. Honey, it's just a legal technicality. My lawyer said it was necessary to protect the investment. Natasha tried to sound calm, but her voice was trembling. Her hands moved nervously. She reached out to touch Daniel, but he pulled away. A small but definitive movement. Protect the investment or protect yourself. I continued. Because that money was never in any real investment. Daniel. Look at these bank statements. James showed more papers. Your money was transferred to Natasha's personal accounts, and from there it was used to pay debts, her family's debts. The guests were murmuring now. Glances were exchanged. Some took out their phones, probably recording or taking pictures. The scandal was unfolding in front of them. And everyone wanted their piece of the gossip to tell later. That's a lie. That's completely false. Natasha raised her voice. Her face had turned red. She was no longer the elegant hostess. She was a cornered, desperate woman. Daniel, she's making all this up. She's jealous. She's always been jealous of what we have. Jealous. I repeated the word with bitterness. Yes, Natasha. I'm jealous. Jealous of how you stole my son. Of how you manipulated him. Of how you systematically pushed me away. James, show them the messages. James took out more papers. Screenshots of conversations. Conversations between Natasha and her mother, between Natasha and her friends. Conversations where she planned every step, where she talked about me as an obstacle, where she mocked Daniel for trusting her, where she calculated how much money she could get out of him before he noticed. Daniel read the messages in silence. The color drained from his face with every line. I've almost got him where I want him. The old lady is a problem, but I'm pushing him away from her bit by bit. It's easier than I thought. I just have to cry a little and he does whatever I want. Those were Natasha's words. Her own words impossible to deny. Natasha, you wrote this. Daniel held up the phone. His voice was barely a whisper full of pain, of betrayal, of a world collapsing. Did you really write this about me? About my mother? Natasha didn't answer. She just stared at the papers looking for an escape, looking for an explanation, but there was none. The proof was irrefutable. The messages were clear. It was all there, black and white, undeniable truth. And there's more, I continued mercilessly. Natasha told everyone her family is rich, that they have properties, successful businesses. But the truth is they're bankrupt. Her father lost everything 3 years ago. The house they live in is mortgaged. They have debts with 4 different banks. Over $500,000 in debt. And your money, Daniel? Your money has been paying those debts. Maintaining the illusion of wealth. Propping up a lie. James showed the bank documents from the Whitmore family. Overdue mortgages, unpaid loans, maxed out credit cards. All the money they pretended to have was smoke. Debt disguised as success. And now everyone in that room knew it. All the elegant friends, all the business partners, everyone who had believed the facade. One of the guests, Rebecca Morrison, a businesswoman who knew Natasha from some social club, spoke up. So the trips to Europe, the jewelry, that was all with Daniel's money. Her voice was indignant, deceived, because she had probably also believed that Natasha was on her same social level, that she belonged in that circle of wealth, and now she was discovering it was all a lie. Natasha tried one last time. Daniel, please let me explain. Yes, I made mistakes, but I did it for us, for our future. Your mother is twisting everything. She's making it look worse than it is. Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time. Not of manipulation, of desperation, of watching everything fall apart. But Daniel wasn't looking at her with love anymore. He was looking at her with disgust, with betrayal, with the pain of someone who discovers that everything they believed was a lie. You used me from the very beginning. You used me. You pushed me away from my mother. You made me believe she was the problem when the problem was you. His voice rose, rage mixed with pain. You needed my money. That's all you ever needed. And I was stupid enough to give you everything. He turned to me. His eyes were full of tears. Mom, I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought you were jealous. I thought you couldn't accept that I'd grown up. But it was her. All this time, it was her. His voice broke. My son. My boy crying in front of everyone. Destroyed. I wanted to hug him, but I stopped myself. Not yet. First, I had to finish what I started. First, I had to make sure Natasha could never hurt him again. Daniel, she was going to have you sign an $800,000 mortgage next week for a house that was going to be in her name with fake documents saying her family put down the down payment. You were going to go into debt for 30 years for a house that would never have been yours. James showed the emails, the documents from the real estate agent. The entire plan detailed, ready to be executed. All that was missing was Daniel's signature. Just one more week of deception, one more week of lies, and my son would have been financially trapped forever. The guests weren't hiding their shock anymore. They were talking amongst themselves, pointing at Natasha. Some were leaving, others were on their phones. By tomorrow, the whole city would know what happened tonight. Natasha Whitmore would be socially destroyed. No one in that circle would ever trust her again. No one would ever welcome her. Her reputation was finished. Natasha collapsed. She fell onto the sofa, sobbing. She wasn't trying to defend herself anymore. She wasn't trying to explain. She just cried because she knew she had lost. That everything she had worked for, everything she had built on lies had come crashing down in one night. At one dinner, because of one mother-in-law she had underestimated. Daniel walked over to me. He took my hands. Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me. I was an idiot, a blind fool. I treated you so badly. I pushed you away. I made you feel like you didn't matter, and all because I believed her lies. His words came out in gasps. Between sobs, my son was crying and I finally let the tears fall too. I hugged him tight, tighter than I had hugged him in 3 years, the way I used to hug him when he was a boy and the world hurt him. And I was his refuge, his protection, his home. It's okay, honey. It's okay. It's over now. It's all over, I whispered against his head, and I felt him cling to me as if I were the only solid thing in a world that had turned to liquid. The days that followed that dinner were strange. Daniel showed up at my apartment the next day, early. His eyes were swollen from crying. He had an expression I hadn't seen on his face in years. Pure vulnerability. He sat on my old sofa, and for hours, he said nothing. He just sat there like when he was a boy and would come looking for comfort after a hard day. I didn't try to fill the silence with words. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't bring up the 3 years of pain. I was just there present as I had always been, as I always would be. Because that's what mothers do. We take our children back when the world breaks them without judgment, without reproaches, just with open arms. Mom, how could I have been so blind? He finally spoke. His voice was broken, ashamed. How could I not see what she was? How could I let her treat you like that? Let me treat you like that. He covered his face with his hands, and he cried again. The tears of a man who discovers he built his life on lies. I sat down next to him. I took his hand, the same hand I held when he took his first steps. The same hand I bandaged when he fell off his bike. The same hand that now trembled with pain and regret. She is very good at manipulating, Daniel. She chose you because she knew you were noble. That you were trusting, that you loved with your whole heart. It's not your fault for believing in someone who said she loved you. But it is my fault for pushing you away, for treating you like you didn't matter, for making you feel like you were the problem. He looked at me with those eyes that looked so much like mine. The eyes he inherited from me. Mom, I will never be able to apologize enough. I'll never be able to make up for those 3 years. I don't need you to make up for anything. I just need you to never again forget where you came from. Who was there when you had nothing? Who loved you even when you stopped loving me? My voice was soft. No resentment, because resentment doesn't build bridges. And I needed to get my son back, not punish him. Daniel moved back into a small apartment. He left the house he shared with Natasha. He started divorce proceedings. James helped him with the legal documents, with the lawsuits to recover at least part of the stolen money. It would be a long, painful process, but a necessary one. Natasha tried to call him several times. She sent him long texts, letters, begging for another chance, promising she would change, that it had all been a misunderstanding. But Daniel didn't answer. He had learned his lesson. He had seen the truth, and there was no going back. The Whitmore family tried to threaten lawsuits, public scandals. But James had everything documented, every lie, every fraud, every manipulation. And they knew it. They knew that if they took this to court, they would lose even more than they already had. So they stayed quiet, humiliated, socially destroyed. Sundays became ours again. Daniel came to my apartment every week. We ate together, we talked, we laughed sometimes, we cried others, rebuilding what Natasha had destroyed, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, hug by hug. One Sunday, 2 months after that dinner, Daniel arrived with a box. "Mom, I found this stored in the garage of the house. Natasha had hidden them." He opened the box. It was the photographs. All the pictures of our life together. The ones that had disappeared from his house. The ones Natasha had erased. There they were. Daniel as a baby. Daniel at his first communion. Daniel graduating. The two of us smiling at every stage of his life. I'm going to frame them. I'm going to put them up in my new apartment because I am never going to forget who was there, who loved me when I had nothing, who sacrificed everything so I could have a better life. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Forgive me, Mom. Please forgive me." "I already forgave you, honey. The day you were born, I forgave you for anything you could ever do in this life." I hugged him and I felt that we had finally come back. That my son had returned to me. Not the boy he was, but the man he should have always been. A man who knew the value of loyalty, of true love, of family. Months later, I ran into Eleanor at the grocery store. She hugged me tight. "Gloria, you look different. You look at peace." And she was right. I was at peace because I no longer carried the weight of injustice. I no longer lived wondering what I had done wrong. I no longer felt invisible. I had gotten my dignity back, not by begging, not by pleading, but by defending myself, by showing the truth, by refusing to be the silent victim everyone expected me to be. And in doing so, I didn't just save myself, I saved my son. Daniel now calls me 3 times a week. He visits every Sunday. He includes me in his life, not as an obligation anymore, but as a choice, as someone who wants to be there, who values my presence, who understands what he lost during those 3 dark years. Sometimes he asks me how I could forgive him so easily, how I could take him back without reproaches, without making him pay for the pain he caused. And I tell him the truth, because a mother's love isn't conditional. It's not a love that keeps score. It's a love that forgives, that waits, that never gives up. But I also tell him that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. That the scars are still there, invisible, but real. And that he will have to live with the knowledge that he hurt the person who loved him most. That is his burden. That is his lesson. And it's a lesson he needed to learn. One afternoon, while we were having coffee in my living room, Daniel said something I'll never forget. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting, because if you hadn't, I would have lost everything. My money, my dignity, and worst of all, I would have lost you. And that would have been the most terrible thing of all." I smiled. A calm, serene smile. The smile of someone who fought and won. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with truth, with dignity, with the quiet strength that only mothers know. "I was never going to give up on you, honey. Never. Because you are my life, my purpose, my reason to keep going." Today, I am 67 years old. I live in the same small apartment. I wear the same simple clothes. I eat the same simple food. I have no luxuries. I have no riches, but I have my son. I have his love. I have his respect. I have his presence. And that is worth more than all the diamonds and big houses in the world. Natasha left town. I heard she moved back in with her parents. That no one in her social circle ever spoke to her again. That her reputation was destroyed for good. I don't feel pleasure at her downfall, but I don't feel pity either. She chose her path. She chose lies, manipulation, deceit, and choices have consequences. I learned something from all of this. I learned that silence isn't always peace. That putting up with things isn't always love. That sometimes you have to fight. You have to defend yourself. You have to say enough. And you have to do it without fear, without guilt, with the certainty that defending your dignity is never wrong. We mothers do not have to accept mistreatment from our children just because we love them. We do not have to disappear to make room for their new lives. We do not have to become ghosts of our former selves. We deserve respect. We deserve love. We deserve to be present. And if that respect doesn't come willingly, then we have to demand it with truth, with proof, with the firmness of someone who knows they are right. Because in the end, the truth always wins. Always. It may take time. It may hurt. It may cost tears and sleepless nights, but it always wins. Today, I look out the window of my apartment. I see the sun setting over the city and I smile. Because I survived. Because I fought. Because I got back what was mine. My son, my dignity, my peace. And no one ever again will take it from me. I promise that to myself. To all the mothers who stay silent when they should scream. To all the women who disappear when they should shine. Luxury is destroyed. Appearances fall. Money runs out. But true love, the kind that asks for nothing in return. The kind that forgives but doesn't forget. The kind that fights when necessary, that love remains. And I am living proof of it.